Feel it now every time I leave. It hits me hard and it cuts me deep. I'm 1,000 miles from happiness, 1,000 miles from you.
I know one time we had a nice big party planned for him and everybody came except Landon missed a plane or something, didn't make it to the party. Met Landon a few years ago when he came to speak to our club and really liked him then, and this is about my 4th time to be out with him since then, and that's why I wanted my son to come, because I said you gotta fish with the best.
Yeah, well, my dad invited me out to join him. Landon's been one of his favorite guides, if not his favorite guide for a long time, so.
Let me just cry real quick, okay? Yeah, I'm Landon Mayer from Colorado, born and raised, trout fanatic. I love giving back. I'm a full-time guide and teacher on the water. So I started guiding right out of high school, 18 years old. Family friend turned me on to the opportunity and idea to do it during the summer, and I just haven't looked back. I really enjoy being out with individuals like Vern and Nick and just seeing people and the smiles on their face, and most importantly, making it a learning, catching experience on the water. It's honestly hard to call it work.
Landon's not only been a great guide, but really a great person. A fun guy to be with, always excitable. He enjoys it, he makes you enjoy it. He helps you a lot with different things that you're doing, improve your casting and stuff without lecturing you about it or anything else. He just gives you some pointers. He's always very encouraging.
Full cast to load it first. Yep, and then you can do one pickup and one lay down and you'll be good. So I like to mix up my guide season, probably 60% river, 40% still water. The thing I really love about still water is that there's no margin for error. The water's still, so you have to concentrate on line control. When you're casting, you have to make sure that you release properly on the forward and the back cast to prevent tangles. You're casting to moving targets instead of still targets. And when you're fighting trout, the cool thing about it is once you get the fish on and you're applying leverage, you really do have to understand when to reel, when to let them run. The battle between you and the fish is so intense. And if you add that element of surprise and techniques and strategies, and also be just as effective on the river, I believe you become the ultimate angler. That's what's so great about being out in the Flycraft and getting people to experience still waters, not just for the depth, but a lot of the fish on the edges in the shallow water environments. One of the biggest things for still water I think you need to understand first and foremost is depth control. Because depth control is very important. Once these fish find a specific depth to feed at, or they're at a specific depth in the water column where the food supply is, whether it's vegetation or hatches emerging to the surface or flies on the surface, it really is important to understand that you need to understand depth control from the top all the way down to the bottom. So for instance, today we had a dry dropper where there was a dry on top and the mini leech jig below at 4 feet. And then the other rig was set up with 3 different nymphs. We had the emerging nymph on top, one in the middle, and then anchored with the leech below. And once you have your presentation set up where you know the depth is correct, then you want to add movement or leave it still. So a lot of our takes today were when we move the fly, and all that simply is doing with the dry and an indicator, lifting and dropping the fly, really giving it movement, and you're trying to attract that moving target. And whenever I'm on still water, I always reflect back to the days when I was doing saltwater pretty heavy with tarpon and trying to understand how I'd intercept the target, and mentally that's how I'm thinking. So intercepting, depth control, and one of my favorite things to do is add a swivel to the mix. I think swivels are great. If you're casting larger dries, it prevents tangles. If you have flies below a micro swivel, you're allowing that fly more movement and flexibility, and in turn, you're giving that movement throughout your leader as well. Yes, that can be a breaking point, but if you break there, you can still build, and you ultimately control your depth. So swivels are a really good key to do that.
I've been lucky to meet a lot of guides and be on the water with a lot of guides, and I'd say Landon's one of the best. It understands where you are at in your fishing experience and you know what you need. So he's able to help me out in the areas where I really needed it and put us on some good fish.
So the longer it stays in, the better chance the fish have a chance to swim by and see it. I think the biggest thing you can remember about still water is, well, there's 3 things. The biggest thing about still water, in my opinion, is depth control. That's very important. The other thing is to remember that not all fish in still water are deep. There's many situations in food supply where these fish come to the edge, and just like in a river system, they're 20 feet away or less. So that's the second thing that's very important. And the third thing is to understand that when you're trying to find the fish in certain locations, think of it as where the trout are going to feed. And a lot of times it's cover like you would find in a river. So the cover could be rocks. Today the cover was vegetation. Sometimes it's intercepting points where they come around a bay, but that's really important to make sure that the fish feel safe. And then lastly, pray for big fish chop. If you're out in slick water conditions and you're like, oh my God, nothing's gonna eat, you get that little chop on the surface and the fish just turn on.
I know other guys from my area that fish with him, and we all think he's the best. So, you know, that's why I want to come out every time I can to fish with him.
You know, especially in the West, we have a lot of changing weather systems, seasons, and in turn, we have a lot of fluctuation in water. And it seems to be more and more every year we have water dropping at a drastic rate. Today, the water's coming down 6 to 12 inches. The inlet's only running 9 CFS and the outflow's 120. So with that drop in water, you really do have to pay attention, not only where the fish are going to be holding, but the time frame. You have to be out there when the fish are feeding active or when there's chop on the surface where they feel safe, because dropping water forces them to find new homes, and ultimately they can strive deep to look for their food and, you know, safety areas. So levels of water become a huge concern. And for me, what I like to do is just time it where, for instance, today we got out, as soon as the temperature started creeping up into the 40, 50, 60 degree range, I then know that the bugs, the food supply, all of that's going to steadily increase, which in turn would get the fish on during the bite. If we missed that 2-hour window today, we wouldn't have had the same success and the same results. So you really do have to pay attention when levels are dropping, time it when the fish are active and they're not so worried about finding new areas to hold. And then afterwards, we just have to wait for things to calm down. But it is a big problem throughout the West. Pay attention to reservoir levels, pay attention to river flows, and most importantly, if it gets really hot in summer months, just pay attention to hoot owl. Make sure that water temp's not getting to 68, 72 degrees, and if it is, just leave the fishery alone. What I really enjoy about working with Flycraft and other great companies is that they're paying attention to detail, and that really is key. For me, it's the simple details and how people find success on the water. And I think preparation is key to becoming a successful guide. And being able to prepare, knowing I have the tools with Flycraft and the tools with all the other sponsors and brands I work with, really makes my job easier and allows me a chance to bring people like Vern and Nick out and find success. So I really do, want to thank all these great companies. And the other thing is, whether you're out on the water and it's on fire, or whether you're out on the water and it's challenging, I think the goal at the end of every day is to understand that positivity is a choice. Just make sure that you keep it on the up, even if things are down and the fish aren't biting. If you stay positive, you find success, and really that's the key in my model for any trip I do in the water. So I'll keep striving every day. Hopefully the fish will start biting more every day, and if not, then just stay positive.